Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you may be joining us from. Thanks for taking a little bit of time out of your schedule today to join us for this webinar, the 5 Best Practices Against Ransomware. So thanks for taking the time to join us. You should see on your screen here just the title slide of today's presentation. We've got the Gartner logo on here too. Empress was a Gartner 2015 Cool Vendor in business continuity and disaster recovery. We were also the Gartner Visionary in their Magic Quadrant in 2016 for disaster recovery as a service. And my name's Carla Federigo. I am the Director of Marketing here with Empress. And I wanted to share my contact information with you here too. So you should see my email, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, all my info is here. If you'd like to contact me after today's presentation, I would be happy to speak with you. Also, a couple of quick housekeeping items here that are frequently asked. I'm frequently asked if there's a recording of this video, and it will be posted at infrascale.com/webinars within about 24 hours. Also, the slides, I'm frequently asked, can I have a copy of these slides? So you do have access to that in the handouts section of GoToWebinar. So I put actually 3 handouts in there. I put a 2016 disaster recovery attitudes and adoption reports. I also put a ransomware survival guide, and then I put in the handouts these slides that we're looking at now. So go ahead and grab a copy of those. And then last 2 notes quickly here, join the conversation. You can follow us on Twitter at Infrascale, and we'd love to chat with you on social as well. And if you have any questions today, right now during the presentation, just simply use the questions tool in the software. So you should see that towards the bottom of the software, and you can go ahead and type anything in there that you have questions about, and then we will come to Q&A. All right, so taking a quick look at the agenda for today. First, we're going to look at the evolution of ransomware. We're going to see how it started and where it's going. We're going to look at some of the best practices for preventing ransomware, so really the main topic for today. Then we're going to talk about just recovering from an attack. If it's something that's already affected you, what do you do now to really combat this? And then we're going to do the Q&A last. We also have a prize giveaway during this Q&A today. So to be eligible for that prize giveaway, all you need to do is ask lots of relevant and on-topic questions. So please keep those questions rolling throughout the presentation, and that is going to get you eligible for that prize. So we'll come to that at the end. But with that, let's go ahead and dive right in. So does everyone see now the what is ransomware slide up on their screen? You can use the question tool and just confirm it for me. But it simply says, what is ransomware? Along the top here is the title. And this is really just to start with a quick understanding of what ransomware is, how it's changed over time. And ransomware can really take several different forms. So what it is essentially is a type of malware that denies access to a device or files until that ransom has been paid. So it's going to encrypt a user's files and then force them to pay a fee to that hacker to regain access to their own data. And here's where the even bigger problem sets in. It's that ransomware encrypts the files on a workstation, and then it can travel across your network and encrypt files on your network drives. So simply one user can take down an entire department or entire company. So let's take a look now here at the evolution of ransomware. And since computers have been in use, programmers have been able to create malicious software. Even earlier than 86 or 89, like you see on the left of your screen, the Creeper virus was one that was created in 1971. So really early example here of how quickly malware can spread through systems. And the proliferation of malware is moving at an alarming rate. Take a look at 2006 through 2010 with high-speed encryption. By 2007, as much malware was produced in that one single year than had been produced in the previous 20 years altogether. So if you look at the right side of the screen, 2016 and where we're at today, many different types of malware, CryptoLocker, CryptoWall, Locky, these are several different strains that we're going to talk about, each in a little more detail coming up, because they do deserve a bit more attention. So where does that leave us now? Well, now in 2016, there are two types of organizations out there. There are those that have been breached, and then there are those that have been breached but simply don't know it yet, right? And a couple of trends in ransomware to look at. Almost 3,000 new malware modifications were reported in just the first quarter of 2016. And we know now ransomware gets activated by user. The user lets it in, it starts modifying all the files on the system until you get a triggered message from the ransom demand, and we'll take a look at those next. So if you get one of those triggered ransom demands, paying it involves paying some sort of e-currency, cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, and then once the hacker verifies the payment, they can provide the decryptor software. But then the computer really starts that long process of decrypting all the files. So that's why we've seen that second stat that we're looking at in green, 72% of ransomware victims were unable to access their data for 2 days. And that can take up to 5 days in other cases. So what we know is they're getting away with this because let's look at the amount of ransom paid. The FBI reported these findings. There was over $200 million paid in ransomware in just the first 3 months of 2016. This is the third stat on the screen here. But if we look at all of 2015 combined, the entire year of 2015, only $25 million was paid in ransomware. So this is really how quickly it has grown. And what we've seen is that over 1/3 of SMBs were victim to malicious phishing emails in 2015. And that's how a lot of those users got infected. And one of the really big problems with ransomware is you have no idea for months. So ransomware works slowly. It starts on your old files in the system. It's all based on the last date opened or the last date modified of those files. And it starts modifying all the files on your system slowly until you get one of these messages for a ransom demand. So since those files are encrypted, the hackers are going to display a screen like this. It's explaining, how to pay to unlock those files. And in the past, these prices have started at about $300 to $500. But now, fast forward to 2016, companies are being hit with ransoms in the thousands of dollars. So it's getting way up there. And plus, the ransom often will increase as the hours pass if you don't respond. So the ransom price keeps going up. Now, we know that hackers are primarily infecting a machine using phishing emails, also using free software downloads, things like unpatched programs or compromised website, even sometimes poisoned online advertising. All of that can unknowingly get you infected. But what's the most common scenario is an attack starts when a user opens a malicious email attachment. So that's what we see most commonly. And then that installs the virus onto their desktop, begins encrypting all the files. And a lot of times, the hackers will even send a file with multiple extensions. So they're trying to hide the true type of the file that you're receiving. And then, user opens that email attachment without verifying authenticity, and the infection begins. So here are a couple of the obvious symptoms if you are infected. The really clear ways to know how you're infected. So you suddenly can't open normal files on your machine. A window opens that you can't close, and it has one of those messages that we saw on the last screen, one of those ransom messages. If you get a warning that there's a countdown until a ransom increases, or if you get a warning about decryption of your files, that's a pretty clear message as well. And then if you see files and directories with names renamed, how to decrypt files or decrypt instructions, all things like that. Now, on top of that, there are so many different strains of ransomware in circulation, so there's lots of different types. CryptoLocker is one that targets computers running Windows, and it's going to restrict access to that infected computer. It also has been spreading through fake emails. These emails were designed to mimic the look of legitimate businesses. So it was getting sent through phony FedEx and UPS tracking notices. Another one is Ransom32, and this is a variety of a type of ransomware as a service, which is really scary because that effectively puts the power to create ransomware into the hands of just about anyone, regardless of any of their technical know-how. And what makes that one really dangerous as well, it's coded entirely using JavaScript. So that means it can be used to target computers running Windows, Mac OS X, and Linux. So it's not just Windows there. Many other types as well. And of course, they all infect that victim's data files with no known way to decrypt those files for free. Now, Locky is one that we've all heard of quite often recently, and this one renames all of your important files. They have the extension .locky, and then it encrypts them. Only those cyber criminals have the decryption key. But what we've seen is that Locky is really a game changer. First, it's targeting a worldwide audience, and so it's businesses and organizations through your entire network. One of the main routes of infection has been through spam email campaigns that are disguised as invoices. So they're Word documents containing a malicious macro attached to those emails. And what we saw in the beginning days of ransomware was that hackers were only going after consumers, their individual files and folders. But these strains of ransomware are increasingly infecting business systems. And so Locky is one of those. It's really up to the ante on extorting payment for the decryption key. Businesses throughout Europe, Japan, New Zealand, Australia, they've all been hit by these massive email spam campaigns. And then even closer to home as well, businesses are being targeted with these similar type of spam attacks. Just recently, Amazon.com was targeted by a massive phishing campaign. It was estimated to have sent out about 30 to 100 million spam messages claiming to be an Amazon.com shopping order update. So here's where an even bigger problem sets in. It's that Locky encrypts the files on that one workstation, but then it can travel across your network and encrypt files on your network drives. And that's how one single Locky infected user can bring a whole department or even an entire organization to a halt. So what do you do if you're infected? And more importantly, how do you prevent an attack from happening in the first place? So now that we have a really good understanding of what ransomware is, how it works, we're going to shift gears and talk about what can be done to prevent it. So let's get into the ransomware best practices and how we're going to work against ransomware. Now, of course, we know it's important to have antivirus, more like a firewall though, stopping things from coming in. So if you lack really sophisticated cybersecurity infrastructure for anti-malware to stop things once they're already in your system, then you're at risk. And right now, none of us are immune to these types of high-profile attacks. Plus, everyone has irreplaceable data. So let's talk about how to effectively and affordably take the proper preventative measures, because I know that you don't want to be stuck with that FBI recommendation to just pay up, right? So let's get you set up with a new set of best practices and prevent all of this from happening to you. But I have talked quite a bit, and I really want to hear from you guys. So I'm going to first launch a quick poll. And this poll is simply asking, when it comes to ransomware, which of these is you? A, I've been a victim of ransomware, or maybe one of my clients has been a victim of ransomware. B, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach at all. C, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. Looks like 70% of you have voted so far. I'll give everyone a moment to vote here, and then I'll share the results. Okay, we've got 83% have voted so far. Right now, it's pretty split 50-50 between A and B. We'll need a couple more votes to break this tie here, guys. 46% are saying, yes, I've been a victim of ransomware. Maybe one of my customers has been a victim of ransomware. 54% right now saying, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. Or maybe do you fall into the category of, I've been infected by malware but don't know it yet. And then C, we have 0%. Nobody said, I don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. So that's great to hear, is that we all recognize how large this problem is. We all recognize what it's doing to our critical data. Let me go ahead and share the results so that everyone can take a look. So that's where we ended, and we had about 90% of you who voted. So we had the majority of you guys vote, and it ended up with 46% at A. I've been a victim of ransomware, one of my customers, and I'm curious maybe to hear from some of those from you guys in the question tool. Did you pay the ransom? Did you roll back to a previous backup? What did you do in that scenario? Really curious to hear. And then 54% said, no, I haven't experienced this type of security breach. David commented, not something I wish on anyone. I definitely agree with you, David. Milt says, fourth category, attacked unsuccessfully. So what happened there, Milt? Let's see if there's some other comments coming through, just kind of agreeing with these results here. All right, let me hide these results so we can jump back into the presentation then. Okay, so just finished up on that poll. So let's talk about avoiding ransomware. And backup and disaster recovery, or BDR, it can protect you, but only if you do it right. So we'll talk about that to really talk about what is doing it right and how do I do that. But let's first quickly cover, what do I do if I get infected tomorrow? So what are those first steps that you're going to take for an immediate resolution? So if you do get infected, the first thing you should do is get the infected machine off the network. You just want to stop the malware from spreading. So you really have to assume that the malware can make use of an internet connection, it's spreading itself to other users, so you need to isolate the machine and stop all network communication from the spread of that malware. Next, reset your BIOS time. So not in all instances, but in some instances, you can reset the BIOS time to essentially stop the clock. And that's going to give you more time to prepare your backup and prepare your recovery. And I said not all the time because according to Privacy PC, IT admins don't need to be afraid of that ransomware countdown timer. And that timer that I mentioned earlier, it sort of doubles the ransoms if you don't pay hour by hour. It increases the cost. So you don't need to be afraid of that or worry about that if you just reset your BIOS time back. Again, that's according to Privacy PC. So what this is going to do is give you more time to calm down, recover your key files, and eliminate the malware. Now, third, if you're hit with malware, you do want to roll back from a previous backup. Having that recent backup is going to make it more easy for you to restore operations as quickly and painlessly as possible while saving time and money for yourself and for the business, right? Because right now, most of us think that there are just two options if you get infected. So since the ransomware is working silently and slowly over several weeks, it's encrypting all those files on your computer, having a backup solution in place and regularly testing those backups to make sure that everything is up and running properly, that's one critical part of protecting your business from ransomware. So if you don't have access to a recent backup, you're likely going to have no choice but to just pay that ransom. And that takes time. So consider, what would the downtime cost me? Would it be costlier than paying the ransom? essentially, what is your cost per hour of downtime and how would that affect your business? Now, Tony says, we restored from a backup with ransomware. Tony, how long did it take you to restore from that backup and be completely up and running as though nothing had happened? What was the amount of time that that took? And say, for example, Tony just happened to say he says 24 hours. What did that cost your business, Tony? Let's see, Jim says, once I got on my computer and the message opened with a recorded message that I needed to pay within a certain time, I immediately shut the computer down, waited, and did a cold boot. I had no further problems. Jim, did you lose any data? Was there anything that you noticed that same day that caused any issues? Let's see what else. Milk says that he caught a suspicious attachment before anyone opened it, which is great. So you saw that attachment looked a bit suspicious and did not allow anyone to click on that. David now says, we found an old backup on a thumb drive and reinstalled after a full server rebuild. David, how long did that take? And how much data were you restoring there? Tony now says, it took about 30 minutes. Fortunately, it didn't get enough data. We did lose most of the data on the infected workstation. Wow. Tony, I'm really sorry to hear that. Okay, wanted to share some of those comments with everyone. So let's talk now about how right now, if you were to restore your systems, if I were, for example, to be infected with malware today. Here are a couple of screenshots, and this is my backup and recovery account with Empress. So you can see here my data protection cloud, Carla.Fedrigo. This is my account. This is my online backup and recovery manager. Here are all the files and folders that are on my desktop. And by default, Empress keeps everything. So I have every version ever backed up. I can roll back to any date that I choose. And I can back up with a low RPO, or recovery point objective, and low RTO, recovery time objective. And that's because I regularly back up my machine and I can just recover all of my useful files and keep working. Now, I want to repeat one point that I just made because it's really, really important. I quickly mentioned by default, Empress keeps everything. So Empress keeps everything forever. This is really, really important, that forever archiving. It's critical because most BDR systems will age out content after a few weeks, maybe after a month. But ransomware, as we now know, can take weeks or months to get into your systems discreetly. So it's not really just the idea of having any old backup system in place. You really need a backup system with a forever archiving component built into it as well. Now, my Empress account isn't just the backup and recovery software on my machine. Here's a quick snapshot of my dashboard. So my dashboard is going to provide me one unified management console for all my data protection and cloud storage. It doesn't require any VPN access. From here, I can view activity alerts, I can access reporting and monitoring, I can monitor account usage, manage retention settings, and a lot more. From here, I can control remote deployments. I can use the MSI to deploy anywhere in the world. So a really strong management console here, available from any browser. So I can log into this from my smartphone, from my iPad. I can log into it just from any browser anywhere in the world. Now, here are the account level details. So another page in my dashboard. When ransomware goes through a system, it modifies all the files that it touches. So if it was a file that I was backing up, Empress is going to recognize it as a changed file. And then in the dashboard, in a backup account, I can see account level details. So this analytics tab that you see on the screen here, on the analytics view, you see the last 24 hours, last 30 days, or a calendar view, those radio buttons. You can select between those. And you get analytics of which machines have the most changes. So what we did with this is we took this analytics and we created a new monitoring alert with these details, with these analytics. This new alert we call anomaly detection. So if you have a large number of newly modified files, you want to know what type of event happened, what's touching all my data. And an average backup of changed files is going to just continue as normal. But if there's an unusually large backup, then that's going to trigger the anomaly alert to the admin. So if they're subscribed for monitoring alerts, you'll get that trigger. Now in this alert, you know, okay, I should investigate this, I want to see what's happening. Consider that you may have ransomware, right? So let's take a look at this anomaly detection in action. So here is a quick, here's the Empress Kale dashboard homepage, and let's take a look at how to set up an anomaly warning. Okay, so to configure anomaly settings, you simply go to the Settings tab and then click on Monitoring. In this monitoring page, you'll see the Enable Anomaly Detection setting down here at the bottom. So we let you set the threshold, and then the warning is released when that threshold is passed. So we calculate a rolling average number of the number of modified files over time for each device. If that modified file count for backup passes your predetermined threshold, then we release a warning. And if you're subscribed to error alerts, you get an email alert, but it also automatically appears in the general monitoring page where you can see more info there too. So if you see an event, investigate it. Then you can also open the details and see things like backup duration, total files processed, how many files were modified, et cetera, et cetera. And then if you want, you can also download the logs by selecting the Manage Action to investigate at a file level. Now typically, users we've seen back up about 5 to 10 modified files per day, since so much work is done online now. But anything 3 to 4 times that is going to be cause for investigation. And nobody has this proactive alerting. None of the backup and disaster recovery vendors out there, BDR, have this type of warning. Everyone is simply, you know, just waiting for an infection to happen and then quickly trying to scramble and either pay the ransom, roll back from a previous date, etc. Okay, so I have one more poll for you guys. I want to hear from you again. So this is simply asking, when it comes to backup and disaster recovery, which of these is you? A, I can confidently roll back to a previous backup within 15 minutes. B, I wish I had backup and disaster recovery, just can't afford it. Or C, I still don't think I'll be affected by ransomware. All right, 44% have voted so far, so I'll give everyone another minute here. %70 have voted, so that's great. Thank you, everyone who's participated so far. I'll just give everyone else just a moment here to vote. Great, and now we have 85 have voted, 85%. So almost everyone has voted. Now, let's close this poll and share the results. So we were exactly even, 50-50. And wow, okay, we have 50% said, I can confidently roll back to your previous backup within 15 minutes. And that's excellent. I also want to ask, how regularly do you test that? Have you tested it and checked that out? And then also 50% said, I wish I had backup and disaster recovery, but can't afford it. Okay, we will talk about this in just a moment, so we are going to get to that. very glad to see that nobody answered C. It's almost a trick question, isn't it, for being on today's webinar? Because if you are on today's webinar, you do know that the threat is real of ransomware. So that's great. I guess that was kind of a trick question. And then really curious to hear from you guys who answered A. When was the last time you tested that backup? Curious to hear from you on that. Great. Okay, so thank you again, everyone, for participating. I'm going to go ahead and close that poll down so we can keep trekking along. I'm sorry, was that you, Aaron, on the line?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I hit the mute. I was just waiting for you to continue on. Sorry.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So yeah, we'll go ahead and continue on. Aaron, who was just speaking, that's Aaron Jordan. He's one of our senior sales engineers, and he's going to be diving in here to the Q&A once we get to the end of the presentation. So you guys can get those questions in. Remember that we have a prize giveaway during the Q&A, so get those questions in. Try to stump Aaron. He's been with the company for years. So, all right, let's go ahead and take a look at disaster recovery on demand. So what we're looking at is, what if backup simply isn't enough? You know, right now that's the only solution. What if that's not the best solution? What if it's going to take too long? You have so much data, it's going to take too long to recover completely. So that's where DRaaS comes in, Disaster Recovery as a Service. And DRaaS lets you quickly fail over your systems. It supports DR to be on demand. So here's a quick scenario where DRaaS would come into play. In this situation, here are some end users. They're working. Unknown to them is that they're about to experience a ransomware attack. So I think this is probably not a shock to any of you guys being here on today's webinar. This is exactly the type of scenario that we are looking to avoid. So with on-demand failover, you can simply log in from any browser. And I mentioned this a moment ago, but it's worth repeating. Even if you're on a laptop, you're on a tablet, from a smartphone, you can do this from an iPhone or an iPad. You can roll back to a previous date and instantly recover a clean version of the entire environment, not just the files and folders. You can recover and virtualize. That way, everyone keeps working. And this whole process happens in just seconds. So this is going to happen in less than 15 minutes. Now, let's look at this in a little bit more detail, okay? Because that scenario I went through very quickly, but I definitely want to look at a more detailed view here. So the traditional backup flow is on the left. And the traditional backup flow, this is typical. You'll have your production box and backup server next to it. It's then copying data to some storage. So it could be a tape drive, it could be on-prem disk, it could be the cloud, any offsite storage. So it's just copying data over a wire, and then when a disaster happens, or if a ransomware attack happens, then you have to reconfigure, copy that data back again, copy the data out of storage, reconfigure, and all this takes time, right? You'd recover in days. But on the right, with DRaaS, it's very different. With DRaaS, you don't want to be copying everything back and forth and moving a lot of data several times. You simply want to spin up a working environment where that data is. And so we can virtualize and create up to 200 machines on the fly and reconstruct your entire data center infrastructure where your data is sitting. And this is extremely important because we saw earlier, ransomware has evolved. The primary issue really used to just be individual data loss. I lost my files and folders. But now, ransomware can spread over an entire network. It means that ransomware represents the threat of data loss, but also, and more importantly, the threat of business interruption and downtime. So that's what we're aiming to solve. InfraScale's mission is to eradicate downtime and focus on business continuity. So because modern ransomware attacks will spread across those networks and encrypt data on servers and on network folders and on other machines, one of the biggest immediate issues is that your entire network goes down and your business operations shut down. So while backup was the best solution when the issue was simply data loss, now that we're facing this massive problem of business interruption, DR becomes a far better solution. What we're looking at really is that backup and recovery is essentially going to disappear in the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be completely replaced by on-demand failover solutions and by DREV solutions. So sure, we have a backup and recovery solution, but what you should be looking at is a failover solution. Now, in addition to all of that we've talked about, I know there's a lot of info that we've covered so far. Empress is also a completely end-to-end solution with double-blind encryption, protection for all servers, workstations, and endpoints, unlimited archiving with proactive alerting. That's the anomaly detection that we saw. Unlimited archiving, as I just mentioned, automated data protection, retention policies, admin control. So you can also have unlimited test recoveries. You want to ensure that all those policies you set are working exactly the way you want them to. So unlimited test recoveries, and then 24/7 support 365 days a year. And now this is our global reach, not to mention we're already protecting thousands of businesses globally with our geographically dispersed data centers. So each of these red dots represents a business that we protect. Now with that, I've kind of covered that Empress gives you two really great solutions for ransomware, right? You don't have to sacrifice any of your critical data, you don't have to pay any ridiculously high ransoms, or lose any profits due to downtime. So you have backup and recovery, or you have on-demand failover. Now, one thing that I want to quickly point out as well is that we offer on-demand failover at simply the price point of backup. So that came up earlier with the poll question, I'd love to have failover DR, I simply can't afford it. Well, I think you can afford it. It's that we do offer that on-demand DR at the price of backup. So it's simply that you didn't know it was available yet. And so that's why we're here today. Now we know. So here are some of the next steps. Ransomware is the #1 cybersecurity threat. So I want to offer everyone on this webinar today a 60-day free go at this product. So I want to get you set up, testing everything, seeing how it's running, making sure you configure all of your policies, test it out, and give you 60 days free. To take advantage of this, you can simply use the question tool and let me know. Just say, yep, I'd love that. You could also email me at team@empresskale.com if you want to get in touch with us. But we'd love to have you take advantage of this 60 days free, and we really want to make sure that you have all of your critical data protected. Okay, so again, use that question tool if you'd like to take advantage of the 60 days free, or email team@empresskale.com. And then now from here, I'd like to invite Aaron Jordan back on the line here so that we can jump into the Q&A. So I'll pass it over to you, Aaron.
Thanks a lot for that, Carla. All right, so I'm just going to go through the questions tool and start picking them off one by one. I see the first one from Mac at 12:20 or 11:23, so I'm going to go through that, and then if you have questions, just keep putting them in there, and I'll get to as many as I can. So Mac says, I understand the resolution to restore from backup, but you also mentioned that the attack starts slowly. Question is, how do you know which backup restore is clean? So there's a couple things you can do with this. So number one, because our solution offers unlimited retention, you can go back as far as you need, but generally the indicator insofar as where the attack occurred is usually when that anomaly reporting that Carla had mentioned starts to change, right? So if you're seeing files that are older that are not used anymore are starting to change, or you're seeing an abnormally large amount of files changing and having to back those up again, then you can usually tell that you've been hit by something. And now it's not guaranteed that you've been hit by something, but generally speaking, they try to encrypt as many files as possible, the older ones as possible, as fast as possible, before you trip the alarm. And the way you trip the alarm is by opening a file or trying to open a file that is encrypted. So basically, you can tell based off of the amount of files that have been changed irregularly. Jay Shillette asks, are the Windows restore points enough? So it depends. Your restore points, if they're stored on the actual Windows, and we're assuming we're talking about getting hit with ransomware again, if they're stored on the same machine, I wouldn't guarantee it. Again, that's going to be stuff that's older anyway, because it's just going to archive as time goes on, and it'll encrypt those. Also keep in mind too that Windows uses incremental type of backups as well by default, so it will continue to try to do backups off of a full, and then if you start seeing, by the way, new full backups being done at an irregular basis, that could also be a hint that you've been hit with something. So the Windows restore points could be usable, but I wouldn't put stock on anything that's local or on the same network, because, again, the first thing it does is start hitting you. The second thing it does is start going for other machines on your network, thus killing your actual local backup. Brian asks, is this just for desktops or servers an option too? We cover everything. We like to say mobile to mainframe. So anything that you can throw at us, we can pick up with it. And we have solutions from everything from mobile devices like laptops and iOS and Android to servers that sit there and don't do anything. We have on-site appliances for that as well. They give you more options than just rollback, but also DRAS as well. So then Mr. Shellez asks again, DRAS is also the file folder level as well? Yes. So you have a choice of doing file folder, bare metal, system state, DR images, along with host level snapshots for VMware and Hyper-V. So whether a physical machine or a virtual machine, we give you the ability to choose. You can also choose to do granular backups of SQL or Exchange as well. So that will give you that option to, kind of pick and choose what you want in the way you need it. Jim asks, in the past, multiple software, firewall, antivirus, anti-spam, etc., interfered with each other. Today, how many different types of software give the most complete protection? That's a really good question, Jim. So number one, I didn't see it here, and it's kind of a newer item, is malware protection. I'd say that's probably one of your biggest items to get, and then also a robust firewall, right? So a robust firewall is going to prevent access, if possible, to bad stuff, specifically people implanting stuff. And then an anti-malware will look for it if it finds it. Viruses are generally a different type of issue. Those are still good to get out of, but generally malware is a different league of virus. Anti-spam is generally for your email only, so that's valuable if you have like some kind of marketing business where you're getting a lot of spam emails you don't want. But the thing that I would top it all off with is a solid backup solution, because there are going to be times when the firewall is breached and the malware isn't up to date with the latest definition because you got hit with something that was released yesterday, right? So you're going to need a backup to roll back to. So I'd say the most complete solution is still going to be your firewall, a malware protection, a backup solution, and most likely, nowadays malwares come with antivirus protection. Anti-spam I'd say is probably more for email, and it's dealer's choice if you want that or not. Jay Shelton asks, is this a bit level backup or system file level? So it actually does block level backup. So it is looking at the change blocks, and it's only pulling in the change blocks. But the good news is you can always roll back to any point in time, and it'll rebuild that file from a previous baseline plus the bit changes or the block changes. Sarah asks, when do you think the bad actors will start making you pay for A, your files, and B, for them not to release the file to the public? So, Sarah, generally speaking, what happens is when you activate or try to open up a file that's been encrypted, that's when you get your warning. And so there is no specific time frame by which they attack you. It's just simply when the warning pops up, a countdown starts. And then that countdown will then dictate your access to the individuals to request the key. And then that's how you know how long you have. So basically, it's not on a specific time frame. It's based off of the time frame from the point that you activate the warning or the alert from the ransomware software. And then insofar as releasing files to the public, there's not a lot of money in releasing files to public. That's more of a Snowden type of thing, and that's usually an inside job, right? So that's more of a IT security and making sure the right people have the right access. Leaking files to public there's no real money in that. So that's just to embarrass people. What they want is to hold your files hostage because they know it stops your business from working. So if you can't make money, that's where the problem comes in. Jay Sheltaz also asks, so this is synced virtual copy. How often synced? How about network traffic volume? Essentially, it's a synced virtual network copy, correct. How often is it synced? As often as you like. So you can set your retention policy and your backup policy to be whatever you want it to be, both locally and in the cloud. And then how about network traffic volume? So that really depends. It depends on how much data you have, but again, generally we're talking in change blocks. We only want to push the data that's different. And to that end, and we could probably talk more about this on a separate call if you call in for self-engineer to give you a rundown of this solution. But we have something called DDFS-AR. It's our own file system that's built into an appliance. And the idea is it only looks at the change blocks. And then when it replicates to the secondary site, whether it's our cloud or another appliance, it's already telling it what it's going to send. And the second site says, I don't need this or I don't need that because you're the same, because our appliance is global dedupe. So the idea is you're only sending absolutely the unique data across from site A to site B. So you're actually saving a lot of time and bandwidth in sending data, even if you've got a brand new full image or a brand new server that you just took a snapshot of. And also I should say this too, we have traffic shaping tools within the appliance to prevent you from overwhelming your network, so you can make sure to throttle it to get the amount of data that you have across properly. Jay also asked, Jay Shelton also asked one more, are you ITAR compliant in your data centers, or can you be? Yes, actually, so we're Sarbanes-Oxley, SAS 70, SSA E16, HIPAA compliant. Well, more than anything, you have to be HIPAA compliant, but we support HIPAA compliance so that you don't have to worry about violating that. Along with Safe Harbor, I could go all day about the certifications that our data centers have. They're all IBM software Tier 4 data centers. And then the foreign data centers, we have Rackspace and other higher level data centers are all Tier 4. We only go in the Tier 4 data centers. But we are more than happy to and recommend that you request a report upon becoming one of our resellers, so that you can, kind of show it off to your clients, and if you get audited, you've already got the documentation there. So we definitely recommend that, and then you signing a business associate agreement with Empress as per HIPAA compliant regulatory bodies required. Brian asks, I'm interested, however, just implementation of the new backup solution. I assume that it's kind of a pain to implement a new backup solution. I know because I've done rip and replace. I did IT before I became onto Empress. It can be as painless or as easy as you want. In fact, most of our solutions are rip and replace. We go in and take care of everything, but that's kind of the best part about Empress. We're one-stop shop. You take out the other product, you put ours in, we offer the same features, if not more, except you only have to go to one dashboard to manage everything. So think of it this way. Yeah, it's like tearing off a Band-Aid, but if you actually add in a better antibiotic to heal faster, it's going to be better for you in the long run. And so we can be that better solution by easing you into it. You don't have to rip and replace everything today. You can take out pieces as you go to replace and build so that you're satisfied with what you have, so you can build out what works for you. And that's definitely something that Empress can help with. We do offer free consulting and free deployment options, so that when you do deploy this, it will get done correctly without stressing out. So I'll try to get as many more as I can. We're kind of getting close to the end here. But David asks, has Empress changed its policy of selling to resellers? Actually, we are channel focused. We prefer only to sell to resellers, to the point that even if we get direct leads, we will talk to the people and then hand them directly off to the reseller, and never quoting anything more or less than MSRP, so that you guys still have the ability to put in your services or whatever you need to become part of that. Dwight has left, but he did ask what's the typical cost. That's something you can get from sales reps, so I definitely recommend that you contact Carla to get us to reach out to you. David said one of the screenshots showed AVG business. Is there a relationship between us and AVG? Yes, actually, there is. They use our product for the direct-to-cloud and are starting to implement their managed workplace with our not only direct-to-cloud but also appliances. If you're looking for an all-encompassing solution, so antivirus and backup with malware and malware, definitely give our friends at AVG a call. they will get you in contact, generally speaking, with Margie Anderson, who is on our side, and then you can see that relationship form and how we work together. So I definitely recommend going to join forces. Brian asks, is there a data file size number of files caps? What if I have 5 terabytes of data? That's cool, David. You can come to us with whatever you have. We actually have a current client who's got 2 terabytes of data alone in his own personal stash. And we have other people that resell about 5 petabytes of data. We have another individual that has a petabyte of data for their operation as well. If you have a need for a solution, we've got you covered. We can cover everything from small mom and pops to the largest scale corporate. Just jumping down, David asks again, are you coming out with a backup for iOS? We already have it. Go to the Android store or the iOS store and look for Managed Offsite Backup or Empress. The app is there. You can use existing online backup accounts to back up your mobile devices as well. So the same solution works, just use the same username. Anchor asks, deep freeze solution works for avoiding ransomware. It's a step. You can deep freeze, but you still need a solution to bring you back into action to be able to restore everything. Brian asks, is Infoscale storage located in the continental U.S. or multiple sites? We have 3 data centers in Houston, in Dallas, 1 in Houston, 1 in Salt Lake City, 1 in Louisville, Kentucky, 1 in L.A., and that's just the stateside stuff. We also have Canada covered with their own data center for those foreign dignitaries that need their data in the foreign countries. We've got Johannesburg, South Africa, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Germany, United Kingdom. We have a ton of data centers. To get more information on that, you can contact us. Brian, do you have to buy an appliance? It depends on what solution you want to use. I think that's good for a conversation with one of our sales reps. And just jumping down, Carlos asks, are you able to discuss some pricing? Again, definitely want to talk to our our sales team, and they'll be able to help you with that. Rex asks, are you have any agreements with Continuum? No need. We actually, unless you mean the RMM. If you mean the RMM, we do integrate with RMMs by using our APIs. And you did also ask later, do we have APIs? So yes, we have APIs that'll let you do literally everything. Everything from creating backup users to jobs to allocating things, etc. You don't ever have to use our dashboard. You can build your own if you want. And then let's see. Jim asks, and this will be the last question before I hand it off to Carla. With HIPAA's confidentiality requirements, what is the liability for healthcare providers to protect confidential data? Could it be less costly to have protection than to pay fines? Oh, no. It's always less costly to have protection than to pay the fines. Currently, I think it was as of 2 years ago, the fine was up $250,000. As of 2000, I think it was 10, it was up to $1 million. And then I think now in 2015 and hopefully going into 2016, I think it's going to be a couple $1 million. You do not want to get caught with your pants down. With HIPAA compliant, the government is aggressively attacking that, especially with the new healthcare reforms. They're looking at it as a way to do clean sweeping. So it is never wise to get hit with the penalties, because not only that, they'll also stop referring business to you, and that's not good either. So just know that as long as you set your due diligence on your side with regard to auto logging off machines and setting access rights, then Infoscale's got you covered on the cloud side. And then we will sign business associate agreements to cover that as well, to make sure that you can just simply wave that document in the auditor's face, and they can know that it's going to be safe, or they'll contact our data centers to find out the information to validate, and then you're good to go. We got you covered in that.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, hand it back off to Carla here.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I didn't want to cut in there, but we do have about 5 minutes left, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I wanted to draw your attention to one last, just very quick poll. I already launched that poll, simply asking, do you want to learn more? Do you want to learn more about Infoscale and BDR? Are you interested in educational information about ransomware, or not interested in any more information now, maybe later on? So I just wanted to draw your attention to that first. So that's going to be the very last poll for today. I want to be sure to keep on time here, so hopefully everyone will have a chance to participate in that, and thank you very much for participating. And then with that, I wanted to make sure we came back around to that prize giveaway that we did promise in the beginning. So congratulations, Brian. We will be reaching out to you today later on in the afternoon with more information on that so that we can mail that out to you, a new Kindle or Chromecast. And also we had lots more questions that were just coming through during the entire Q&A. We had so many people participate. We have hundreds of people on today's webinar. So if in the event that your question did not get asked, we will follow up with you via email. So apologies for not being able to get to everyone's question today, but I do want to stick to that hour time frame that we promised. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Erin, for being here to answer all those questions that we got through, and we very much look forward to working with all of you in the future. Have a great day.
Cheers, bye.